but a lot of the things that are happening in the world are not at the Googleable level necessarily. They're in that deep web. And I'm really happy to introduce my friend and colleague here, Matt Edmondson, who is a principal at Argelius. Is that how you say it? We'll just say that. And also he's a SANS instructor. Matt's going to tell us how to weaponize the deep web. So without further ado, Matt Edmondson.
Thank you. It's pronounced Argelius. It's a made-up planet from an old Star Trek episode, but it sounds like Greek and classy, right? Like if I didn't tell you guys it was some classy Greek word, you'd buy it. So I ain't got that much time, so I'm not going to waste it talking about me. I want to talk about breach data. And breach data is like a very, very controversial topic. Like some people have some very strong emotions about it. So if you like some of the stuff I'm talking about and you want to do it, buy me a bourbon, talk to me afterwards. Like if you hate it and you don't think anyone should be doing it, buy me a bourbon, talk to me about it afterwards. So either way, I win. But what we're going to talk about here is a quick intro, talk about where do we actually find the data, talk about how we weaponize them. By weaponize it, actually make it useful, because some of these data breaches are ridiculously large in size. How can you search that in a quick manner? And then most importantly, the fun part, how we can actually use the information, like how our organizations or how we as individuals can use it in our security goals, really whatever they are. So we'll say that's the fun part. We'll save it for last, like dessert, like reasonable adults. 2 seconds on this, like what is the deep web, right? Well, what is it? It's basically, it's nothing magical about it. I'm not trying to sell you anything, right? It's just crap that's on the internet that is not in Google. It's not magic. There's a lot of large files on the internet that aren't indexed in Google. There's a lot of compressed files that aren't indexed on Google. There's things you need to log in to access. They're not in Google. It's not some magic thing. So if you have a 2 gigabyte file that's zipped up, Google may help you actually find the file, but the contents of the file, that's not going to be in Google. So, and when I say Google, I mean search engines. I'm just using it. So for the 3 Bing users in here, I apologize for offending you. So no, like Bing's got a place. Like Google has had their face suit off so many times they censor search results, right? You ever like try to Google Pirate Bay and it's giving you like VPN sites? Like, don't play coy with me. You know what I want. I'm looking to pirate a damn movie, So nah. Whereas Bing, so if you're ever like in a city and trying to buy drugs, use Bing, not Google, because they won't censor the results and you'll have much better luck. So yeah. For the 4 of you I see writing down right now, you're welcome. So we got a room full of people here doing OSINT for a lot of different reasons, but I'm not naive, right? It's Washington, D.C., it's an OSINT summit. We have quite a few in here that are law enforcement, that are military, that are intelligence community. And when you're doing OSINT in that realm, really a lot of times there really is only one challenge. It's identity resolution, right? We've got some selector, we've got an email address, we've got a phone number. We're trying to actually tie that to an individual or a group. And we're doing that over and over and over on loop. And that really becomes, like I said, for quite a few of us doing OSINT, the biggest challenge we have. And breach data can help us with that. So most people are here and are familiar with this. I use this all the time when I teach technical classes on OPSEC to kind of demonstrate not using the same password on multiple sites, but it's the site Have I Been Pwned, run by Troy Hunt. He has friends that hang out on kind of the seedy underbelly of the dark web or on the internet. And when this breach data, every single day we hear about some place getting hacked. And if he can ever get his grubby paws, or his friends can get his grubby paws on this data and they get it to him, then he will index it and put it in here. So we can put in your email address there and see, hey, has my email been in any of these breach data? And the answer is yeah, absolutely. It was 16 of them. When I first made the slides about a month ago, it was 15. Last week I was updating something and it was 16. I'm like, cool, update the slide. And so like I said, I love this when I'm teaching technical classes on OPSEC, because it just shows like you cannot reuse the same password. So, I had an account on Black Hat World that got hacked back in 2014. Why? Because I was doing some of the same stuff from 2 talks ago, buying like residential proxies, Black Hat SEO accounts, some of the exact same things for reasons that we won't get into here. But you see, like, okay, that account got hacked, big deal. It's not that big of a deal unless I use the same password that I'm using for my Gmail, for my bank, and other stuff. And it's a good teaching point there. But here as OSINT analysts, we're looking at, we're like, damn, date of birth, email address, instant messenger, IP, passwords, username, website activity. If I can transition from an email address to all that, if I could get my grubby paws on the actual raw data, that's a gold mine. If I can take that email, turn it into a username, turn it into all these different types of things. And that's kind of what we're going right here. So if this seems interesting to you at all, how can you actually find it, right? So it seems very simple, but just Google it. Kidding, kind of. So there's a few shady sites out there like darknetleaks.ru, so that's fantastic. But we can go there and they will have probably like, I think it's somewhere around like 40, 50 different breach data sets there. And there's nothing amazing sitting there. You can just see the top result there, Avast. But if you can find like one site like this, and hey, spoiler alert, I just gave it to you, and I'll give you the link to download my slides. But if you can take that, okay, you can grab anything there that you want, but then we can take the file names. We can take the file names there like Avast 2014 400K and now search for that. And now if you look at the search results from that file name, we have 127 results where we see that from. And I think within like 2 clicks of that, I was able to find like a giant torrent link that had just a ridiculous amount of breach data out there. So like I said, if you are searching for this, that can be one way you can find it. We don't have the time to get into the OPSEC. My time is very limited in this talk, but use some protection, right? Whether it's VMs, whether it's Tor, whether it's VPNs, whatever your preference is, but whatever you normally do to kind of keep yourself safe when you're going to these shady sites, you absolutely want to be doing it when you're doing this style of work. Distributed denial of secrets, if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of like WikiLeaks' slightly classier cousin, but they've been having like a lot, slightly. They've been releasing like a lot of really good data leaks lately. This was one they recently had. It said copies of the servers from the Cayman National Bank when a bunch of, wealthy Russians were storing their money and kind of doing some shady stuff. And when they say copies of the servers, no, they mean copies of the servers. So if you look at the actual data here, look at that. Like, that is ridiculous. That is their Exchange server. That is their domain controller, their database server, like everything right there. Like, these are some massive data sets that you can find sometimes with this breach data. And depending on what style of work you do, this may be very interesting to you or not interesting at all. But it is data that is out there just sitting on the internet, just not indexed in Google, clearly. If you're searching for kind of some real-time stuff, you kind of have to get lucky. This isn't automatic. But very commonly, people that host this data, right, no one wants to put it on their own server in their house or their own personal Dropbox. So the most common place where people usually host data in this breach data is Megaupload, right? So shout out to kim.com. But the Mega is a very popular place. So if you're searching for links that are mega.nz and then just like the word leak on Twitter, you're going to be able to have some luck. And right here, you see someone that actually has a link right there to download 1.5 million users' Facebook data leak. And we'll actually see that in a screenshot that we had later today. But once again, it's not just going to be leaks here. You'll see like a lot of animated porn and other types of things for some reason. You'll see some weird things, but this can be one way, maybe sometimes, to get some of the hot off the press leaks. Torrents are fantastic if you can get them. You can't always, but here's some of the, there was some leaks. We'll talk about combo lists later on. But the collection, some of the massive leaks that were out there all the time. So here you can see collection 1. This thing compressed is still over 36 gigs. And that's going to be a really tough download if you're trying to get that from the dark web or something else. I had to download like over 300 gigs from the dark web a couple months ago. That was a painful experience. That was not a fun thing. So if you can clam onto a torrent for some of this collection data or some of the larger data sets, you're going to have a much better time. RAID forums, right? Yeah, a lot of us maybe have played around in here before. This is one you can, there's a lot of data here. You can see some of the data that they have. You can buy little credits. You used to get them from posting. Now it's like kind of, you can buy some little credits and you can use it to download different data sets if you're looking for something specific. The forums here are actually a hoot to read sometimes, especially like the sections where people are looking for data, because sometimes there are things you can kind of make sense. Like sometimes people are like, hey, I'm looking for Spanish telecom data, or maybe I'm looking for UAE banking info. Like, all right, player, like, I can see maybe where you're going with that, what you want. Sometimes something just blows your mind. I remember recently I just started laughing, and it was someone's like, hey, I'm looking for a list of people that have committed white-collar crimes, along with where they served their time and when they served it. Like, dude, like, you know, like, damn, like, I want to talk to this guy. Like, what do you have going? Hey, what you thinking? Like, you can kind of start forming the scam in your head, and kind of, honestly, I wanted to be a part of it. But yeah, if you're just, sometimes specifically, right? So think about this. If you're doing research on a target, you put the email into have I been pwned, and its data sets, and if the data sets are there, I'm not saying to support this ecosystem. Like I said, some people start to get really, you shouldn't do that. I'm not the morality police. I'd be the worst morality police ever. But I mean, there's a whole large data set there that you can go easily acquire if you felt so led. Or like I said, just the forums for the entertainment value alone, frankly. So if you found some of this data, if you found some stuff interesting to you, now what do you actually do with it, right? When you download this massive, massive data set, because honestly, a lot of times, it's gonna be too big to open up an Excel or Notepad or Notepad++ or the things that we normally use to look at data. So usually what I do is I'll just take a really, really quick peek from the command line. So I'll put it in directory, then I'll go in there. For Linux, if you use Linux, right, it's just straight up cat, the name of the file, start spitting it out to the screen. If you use Windows, it's actually just type the file name Windows and start looking at the raw data, right? As it starts scrolling by the screen, you can just very, very quickly hit Control-C, kind of get a view for the data, see what it looks like, what fields are in there, how it's formatted, is there anything separating the phone numbers or anything like that, and get you a feel for what the data looks like, because like I said, a lot of times it's too big to open in our traditional programs. If you were looking for one thing specific, like I remember one time I got a hold of a massive, like hot off the press the day it hit leak, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, he's like, hey, he worked for Booz Allen, he's like, hey, are there any of our emails in here? I'm like, yep, a couple hundred just scrolled by right in front of me. And how we can do that right on Linux, most people that use Linux, they know grep. So we can cat the file name, then pipe to actually take the results and force them through grep. -I makes it case insensitive, and then the keyword we're looking for. And so in this case, you can see I only want to see results from results that have laquinta.com in the line. And people that use Linux, like I said, know grep, but most people that use Windows don't know Windows has the same thing. So we can do type file name to spit out the contents of the file to the screen, but now we pipe it to send the results somewhere else. Find string is what that is, -I, once again, case and sensitivity, I don't care about case, and then the keyword that we're looking for. And so once again, instead of seeing this massive, massive breach data scrolling by way too quick to see, I'm saying I only care about results that have laquinta.com in the name. Liz, what's La Quinta in English? What's La Quinta in English? You're supposed to be next to Denny's. La Quinta, yeah. All right. This is a blog post I wrote a couple months ago. Data hit the internet, right? And it was all from an Iron March. It was like Nazis, like real Indiana Jones Nazis, just someone disagreed with you on Twitter, so you called them a Nazi. Like real, actual Nazis. And so a lot of people doing OSINT were kind of playing with that data. And so it was one of those things. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine who's in the back row here about him. Hey, you know what, cool, there's actually a forensics tool that can really, really help us with this. Because in this room, I guarantee you, I am not the only one that works in my day job in an environment where I get asked something and like I have minutes to answer. Like the time that I have to answer this question is in minutes, not days or weeks. And so this tool called Bulk Extractor can really help us out. And it's a very, very simple tool. It's a digital, like I said, it's designed for digital forensics. The crickets are going off. But it's amazing in OSINT as well. So what it does, it uses something called strings, right? Just to suck out all the text from a file. Even if it's like an executable, it can suck out all the text, or it's some weird, funky format, like an Exchange database per se. But it tries to suck out all the text, and then it uses regular expressions like, hey, if you see a group of letters or numbers, and then an ampersand, then another group, and then a period, and some, that's an email address. If you see it like this, that looks like an IP address. And so it can quickly kind of suck those out. This works like a champ. You can stick this on a massive file, on a hard drive image, and it will go through and it will run very, very quickly and kind of suck out some of these keyword selectors. And so even if you have this ball of data that you're not exactly sure what to do with, if it's like kind of a raw SQL dump and you're sitting there just kind of looking at it like, I don't really know what to do, but just quick, down and dirty. What I usually refer to as just smash and grab. Just a smash and grab selector extraction, stick Bulk Extractor on it, go pour yourself something to drink. When you come back, it'll probably be close to done. And then you'll have all the phone numbers, all the emails, everything like that. It's not 100%, it's not perfect. But like I said, if you work in an environment where a lot of times you have minutes to answer questions, not hours or days, this tool is fantastic. I really can't say enough good things about it. So, also years ago in a forensics class, I heard about a file called, or excuse me, a software called Agent Ransack. It lets you search through like hard drives or everything else for files very, very quickly. And it's free and it's fantastic. The company that makes that, though, they make a free version, or excuse me, a professional version called File Locator Pro. It's $60. And whenever I talk about a technical topic, I always try to give free resources. Like, I hate giving paid resources. It just really pains me. But File Locator Pro here, one of the things that it has, the free version doesn't, you see there, the second one from the top, indexing. And when we're dealing with breach data, indexing is fantastic. And we use indexing all the time when we're doing forensics. And what an index does is it lets us trade effort and storage space now in exchange for much quicker search results in the future, right? So take a quick look at the math. I have 126 gigs of raw data, and that is only one data set. Searching that for a selector, like an email address or a phone number, takes about 50 minutes. That's not tenable, that's not reasonable. So if you start thinking that's one data set, now imagine if you have terabytes of data, a bunch of different data sets, and it's not one email I'm searching for, it's 12 emails, like that's out of control, and that's not usable, right? The whole weaponizing the deep web, what the weaponizing is how do we actually make this data usable? If you're a database guru, if I can give you a bunch of like disparate data from different database dumps, and you're like, yeah, I can just take that, I can dump it into an AWS box, I can get that in a database, no problem, knock yourself out. It's doable, like I've seen it done. The best software engineer I know did it. I sat there and watched her do it. It was a pain in the butt because data's formatted different ways. All of a sudden the hash goes from one format to another. You're like, what format is that even? It can be done, but it's a pain in the butt. My method is lazy AF. Totally lazy, and then it actually makes it usable. And so now, instead of a selector search taking 50 minutes, you just banged off an index job. The indexing job took about 2 days to run, and it took up an extra 73 gigs of space. Spoiler alert, hard drives are cheap. Like I got an 8 terabyte drive full of this stuff. It's like 140 bucks, right? I'll trade the storage space all day. But now that I've taken 2 days of effort to index the data, and now that I'm willing to give up another 73 gigs of storage and size, my searches take about 2 minutes now instead of 50 minutes. And now I have something that's usable, right? Now I can take something that's giving me results back in like 15 minutes, maybe half an hour instead of a day. And it was a heck of a lot easier. I wrote a blog post yesterday, so I posted it on my blog. The link to this GitHub page has a link to it if you want to go check it out. I'll have links and stuff at the end as well to download my presentation and everything else. But I didn't really, that File Locator Pro, I don't like the user interface. I love the fact that for $60, it lets me index the data instead of like a multi-$1,000 forensics program, but the user interface has a few issues. The program itself has some idiosyncrasies, which is why I wrote the blog post that I did. I'll talk more about that in a second. But what I did is I wrote like a Python wrapper for it, and I just call it Duck Hunt. It's an inside joke as to why. But now I can just give it a text file full of selectors, email addresses, phone numbers, whatever it is, just push go. I can go do whatever it is I want. When it comes back, it actually takes the results, it runs it on the command line, and it gives me a nice, neat HTML report that has all the results, and any results in there are made bold so you can kind of find it easier because sometimes the data is a little bit ugly, but it just makes this even more and more usable. Like I said, even if I have a big list, I can fire it up, go home, come back in the next day and kind of pour through the results. Also, I have 2 lists of indexes in there. I kind of talk about this in the blog post. I have one that searches everything that I have, and I have one that only searches data that has phone numbers in it. So if I'm searching phone numbers through that, I don't want to waste my time searching data sets that don't have phone numbers in there. So like I said, it's ugly Python code. It's only like 50 lines. It's very rough, but it does a really good job of kind of just making the process really easy and spitting out a usable report. What's funny is the Python is a really short program, but it still takes up 55K, and you're like, what? It's because I've got one line that's a mile long. And what it does is it actually takes the old Nintendo Duck Hunt logo and puts it at the top of my report. I have that kind of base 60 because I'm an 8-year-old and I'm immature, and it makes me laugh when I see it. So, now the fun part, right? We saved it for the end, like responsible, mature adults. How can this actually help me? The easiest sell of all is the pen tester red team. Easiest sell by a mile, right? Figuring out user accounts for an organization, what their like kind of user login looks like, their email format looks like, and then trying to guess passwords. Fundamental part of all offensive operations. Spoiler alert, people tend to reuse their passwords, right? We see this everywhere we go. Humans are unbelievably predictable, and I absolutely love it. There used to be a service out there called Pwned, and it was really cool. It's like, hey, you know what? I want to go against like Cisco, or I want to go against, MITRE, whatever it is. And you could go to them. They charged a ridiculous amount of money, like it had a comma in it and there was more than one digit to the left of the comma, but then they would give you this basically breach data and like, here are, 1,300 emails and passwords associated with that organization. Like, oh, did the organization get hacked? No, right? Because our users in our internal work emails, we use those for things all over the internet. So you use it to like buy a book somewhere, the publisher gets popped, and now that's how you have this email password. Since people reuse it, we see that. Those can be very, very usable. I think they are out of business. I think they're no longer around, but the good news is you can do it yourself now very, very easily, right? So here I kind of ran through, I just look for Tesla.com. When I'm teaching like SANS classes or technical classes on web hacking, I'll always use Tesla as kind of the example, just because they have a bug bounty that I'm signed up for, so I'll use it. So here you see I just picked one at random, Tesla, and their password is ViewSonic1. If you think about it, this is actually an amazing password, because all the social engineers are trying to look for what? Post-it notes under monitors. They skip the post-it note, and the monitor itself is actually the password. It's actually effing brilliant. It really, really, truly is. So yeah, this is some next-gen stuff right here. Yeah, and if anyone here has played with this before, you will realize how much of an achievement it is to have like 30 passwords here without one of them being offensive. It's not easy. It took me a while to find this screenshot, I'm not gonna lie. All right, so probably not a whole lot of pen testers in here. Blue teamers though, right? How can it help us? Blue team kind of threat intel, getting a little bit closer to what a lot of us do. So yeah, fake accounts everywhere. Think about this. Yesterday, I was actually researching a Gmail address, and it was a valid Gmail that this person used, and I was able to tie it to them on Facebook and several other services. I put it into Have I Been Pwned to see what breaches they were in, and they actually weren't in any, and I was stunned. I'm like, whoa. Think of how rare that is. For those of you that have played with How Have I Been Pwned, think of how rare it is now. If you have an email account, like a Gmail, or whatever it is that you use as your primary account, those damn crickets. Whatever it is you use your primary account, if you haven't been in a breach, are you even real? Like, are you even doing anything? Is that really your primary email that you're using at LinkedIn and MyFitnessPal and everything else? And so financial institutions actually love breach data. Because when you're sitting there and you're writing an algorithm trying to weigh, is this a real person or is this a bot, someone that's trying to mess with me? If this email account doesn't show up in the breach data, that's a point in the negative favor, right? It doesn't automatically mean it's a BS email, but that's absolutely a point in the negative. I'm calling BS on this being a real person. And so that's one way that this data is kind of help protecting some of our organizations that are out there. Have I Been Pwned? One cool feature they have is monitoring for a specific domain. So if I got the rights to herndonwidgets.com, that was my company, all my emails, great, and I could prove to Have I Been Pwned that I owned herndonwidgets.com, then I could tell them, hey, anytime you get any new results from a herndonwidgets.com email, let a brother know. Sweet, that's fine and dandy. But what if I run a service and people can sign up with their service for their Gmail, their Hotmail, or their work email, whatever it is they have. I can't monitor that. Have I Been Pwned isn't helping me anymore, right? I can't give them a list of all my users and tell them to let me know, A, they don't do it, B, your legal would never let you do that. And it's not something you would want to do. But there still is a lot of usefulness in being able to check breach data against your user accounts. I was working with an organization a few months ago. They had a massive amount of accounts taken over. And it was like, you know what, give me like 24. Just give me like 24 of your accounts that have been taken over, cool. Okay, was this person's password this? They go, calculate the hash. Yeah. Is this person's password this? Yeah. Okay, give me one more. This one's this? Yeah. They're all from collection one. Everything we were seeing was all from collection one. It was out of there, right? So reasonably now you start thinking, well, shoot, I should probably scan for any more emails of my users that I have that are in collection one, calculate the hash. If they match up, I should probably, have them roll that password. I need to have them create that and kind of make a new password. So it's up to you when you're legal if you can actually action on that. But that's one way that a lot of organizations, once again, are using breach data to kind of help improve their overall security posture. So if you want to do that yourself, you said, have I been pwned? Is it really going to help you if people are using other emails to sign up for your service? You can either pay a third-party vendor. There are some out there. They are not really cheap, but they do a good job to do it. Or you can do the style that we're talking about right here and kind of roll your own to do your search and kind of figure out. I mean, if you don't think that a bunch of your accounts start getting popped and being able to see the source of where those pops are coming from, if you don't think that has a lot of value, I think it absolutely does. I think it's pretty clear. OSINT Analyst, right? It's the OSINT Summit. Let's talk about OSINT Analyst and how it can kind of help us and use it there. This is a fun one. So we heard it talked about earlier, right? The search my contacts for friends method. You fire up an Android emulator, throw down phone that you got on eBay, whatever it is. You take that, you got your target's phone number you're looking for, you put that in as a contact on your phone, and then you go to Snapchat, and you go to all these different, WhatsApp, Telegram. Hey, I'm new here, help me find friends. As part of my day job, I teach like over 1,000 people a year, OSINT to government and military and law enforcement all over the place. That is a tried and true technique that works like a champ, usually. For anyone who's been playing in the space, right, about the last 5 months, we have seen a little bit of weakening in this, and we've seen it from who? Facebook and Instagram. And Facebook and Instagram now, it's kind of like a little weird, and kind of got to know the network and kind of let it simmer, and there's some idiosyncrasies there. And they're not going to come out and say why that they've made some of the changes that they made, but you can kind of put two and two together. And when these changes started to occur about 5 months ago, what did we see about that same time, right? Facebook, boom, they found like 264 million users' data sitting out there on the web. And as you start seeing some of these massive breaches where clearly people are using things like API weaknesses to enumerate users and their information, next thing you know, Facebook really kind of locked down a lot of the things that a lot of us were using. So, like I said, the technique itself overall is still a champ and it's still worth knowing and doing, but in Facebook and Instagram now it's gotten a little bit weaker. We saw earlier though, man, it's only 1.5, which is only a drop in the bucket of total Facebook users, but there was actually raw Facebook data sitting out there. So let's take a look at some of the Facebook data from some of these leaks. Obviously, I have blurred out 99% of this, but I have blurred out most of Connie's stuff. I have blurred out her full Facebook username. I have blurred out her phone number that you can still, I left enough to see that it starts off with 717. I blurred out that she has an AOL email, which shows she's very tech savvy. We can still show she's born in the 70s because she said last time she had been on before this data was done was Tuesday, February 2019. I blurred out most of it, but still you see enough of a teaser. Yeah, there is plenty of raw data there. And it doesn't have to be data from Facebook itself, right? It can be Facebook adjacent. Zynga, the company that makes all the games that everyone plays on Facebook, they got popped a while back, and that data is out there and actually really, really easy to find right now. If I put my boss's cell phone number through there, there's his name, there's his Gmail address, there's, information about him. So like I said, it doesn't even have to be Facebook itself. It can just be kind of Facebook adjacent. Combo lists. As you start doing this, you will see the nomenclature of kind of combo lists. You're wondering, what is that? So we're talking about breach data where it's like, okay, organization gets popped, the data's out there. This organization gets popped, that's out there. What people will do, people that only care about, that don't have any OSINT value, people that only care about trying to use the valid passwords to crack into services like Netflix or banks or whatever weird, crazy thing they're doing, they will put together massive combo lists that are just combinations of emails and passwords with all the other data stripped away. People that are just trying to use it for password cracking love it. For us as OSINT analysts, we hate it, right? It's mildly interesting to me, but I'd rather have the raw data. But it is still mildly interesting to you. Passwords itself, right, can still be something interesting to you. A while back, I was looking at a Telegram user. Pretty sure they were Russian. And as I take the username and I go to search it through the breach data, I'm looking through the results, and I actually had that username on a Hotmail account. And the password was a super nerdy, like Marvel comic book reference. And I'm like, all right, that's not my Russian threat actor, right? This is not their password. I'm scrolling down through the results. I find two .ru email addresses. both with that same nerdy password. I'm like, I'll be damned. I stand corrected, yeah. So now, once again, I'm telling you, all right, I'm not sure if this is the same person, but at least these 3 accounts, I now strongly know those are absolutely tied to the same person with that kind of nerdy, unique password. So even something as mundane as a password can sometimes be useful, but obviously the raw data with more information like username, IP address is much more handy of what we're looking for. All right. Forensics practitioner, this is probably the iffiest one. Like I said, I'm not the morality police, but this is kind of the one where it's like, all right, we're pushing the line a tiny, tiny bit. I could easily stand here and play the password card. I could play that card today all day long and I could sleep well at night, right? People reuse passwords. We need to know that. A couple months ago, I got a hard drive that had a backup of an iPhone on it and a backup of an iPad. Tried to crack it with 4-digit passwords on both, nothing. Tried to crack the iPhone 6 password, nothing. Tried to crack the iPad with a 6-digit password, got in. I'm like, whoo, okay. What do? Take the passwords from that, for their Wi-Fi networks, from their websites, grab all the passwords from that, then go to use it on the iPad. Like 10 minutes later, I was in the iPad. I even did a nice little dance at my office. There was a witness here who's in the back row right now, and I was super happy. So people reuse passwords, and so heck yeah, right? If you have like a file or a laptop or something tied to an individual, and you know that individual's email, searching it through there to see what other passwords they have, totally valid technique. That's not where I decided to go with this. I decided to go someplace way shadier, all right? I decided to talk practice, right? For the 4 sports fans in here who know who Allen Iverson is and get this reference, practice. Think about this. So many people doing OSINT did analysis of that Iron March data when it was out a couple months ago. All sorts of people did write-ups on it. No one cared. They're Nazis. Right? You kind of forego all of your rights when you become a Nazi. It's just kind of a publicly assumed thing. No one has any problem with forensics companies with e-discovery data is using things like the Panama Papers to demo their products, right? With Enron or like the data from like, the Russian bank accounts. Like no one has any problems. Like, listen, you were shady people doing shady things. So somehow now magically your data is all public domain and people just kind of go accept it and have no problem with it. Think about the forensics practitioner. You want to practice mobile device forensics? All right, we got some stuff out there. Memory forensics, cool, there's memory dumps out there. There's images out there you can download from CTFs. You can have a good time. Where do you practice parsing a domain controller? Where do you practice parsing an Exchange server and trying to get all the emails out of that or searching that for information? You're not going to be able to go to a corporation, just ask them for a copy of their server normally. That can be a very, very tough thing to practice. So if you're testing your tools, if you're calibrating the tools, I hate to say it, but think back like 20 slides ago to when we started, when we're sitting there looking at a SQL Server database, an Exchange server, a domain controller, like all of these servers that have been copied right there. And like I said, this is the one where I'm not the morality police, where it gets like, as I start talking to people like, hey, what do you think about breach data? It's fairly universal of, yeah, no, I think it'd be useful, used responsibly, everything's good. When you start, what do you think about using it to practice your forensics? It's like, like no one really wants to answer, and I get it, but it can be there. And the reason why people are like, right, it can have a lot of sensitive data. For example, right there, right, this is from one breach that was out not that long ago, and you start seeing things like terminated employees, salary changes. Like that's awkward, right? Some of the data that leaks out sometimes very, very kind of awkward to deal with. So I am about out of time now, and I know they're doing a podcast behind me. This slide deck, if you want to download it, it's right there, just a bit.ly. I set it up. There's my Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I think it's like 80% tech, 10% baseball, and 10% alcohol. So yeah, seriously though, like I said, I know I'm about out of time. We're running low on that, and they have a podcast coming up. But if you want to hit me up, I'll be the tall dude drinking bourbon at the bar after this. So, all right. Thank you very much.